I want every kid in Oregon and Washington and Vermont to understand that if he or she does their schoolwork seriously, does well, takes school. What? Oh. Now you see, this little bird doesn't know it. Oh my. I think there may be some symbolism here. I know it doesn't look like it, but that bird is really a dove asking us for world peace. No more wars.
Everyone is sharing that moment again on social media because, believe it or not, it's been 10 years since that moment happened in Portland, Oregon, and watching that again absolutely broke me, which is impressive considering I've been pumped full of so many antidepressants that I think I'm functionally just a robot at this point, which is how I like it, by the way. Nonetheless, even I couldn't not tear up watching that again because I couldn't help but think about what could have been. And it's worse knowing that I was planning to go to that rally that day because, you know, it was in my city. But at the time, it was towards the end of the term. I had multiple term papers due. I was a PhD student. So I thought, no, you don't have to go. You could just watch it online. You know, you don't want to miss school. But man, I wish I actually went because, you know, being there to witness that special moment in person would have been, I think, that much better, albeit that much more harder to look back on. But I mean, everybody is kind of reacting in the same way that I'm reacting by seeing that and feeling nostalgia for that moment because, I mean, look at where we are now. Francesca Fiorentini responded saying, "We're on the wrong timeline." Barbarism critic writes, "It makes me really sad to think about what it felt like to have hope for the future because I haven't had it in some time." Can't Ever Die, aka Jupiter, added, "It's hard to illustrate how it felt at the time if you were too young, but this happening after the shock Bernie primary win in Michigan was a nuclear hopium bomb. It felt like the world was on the precipice of something better." Cam says, "Don't show me this shit again, man." And Communism writes, "Pain. All I feel is pain." Yeah, I mean, nobody on the left thought that Bernie Sanders would be a panacea. Like, nobody thought electing him president would create a utopia in the United States. In fact, you know, I had a lot of policy disagreements with him back then, still do, obviously. But him getting elected would have put us on a completely different trajectory. Because we know he would have defeated Donald Trump in the general, and we would have never had a Trump era in this country in the first place. And I actually went back and I watched some of my old videos after seeing that clip. And it was cringeworthy to do that just because I sounded and looked like an entirely different human being. Nonetheless, you could see in my eyes how hopeful I was, especially after Bernie's surprise upset in Michigan. Like, just watch this quick clip from Humanist Report from 2016.
This is a huge night. If you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, you should be jumping up and down right now because what just happened is unthinkable. It's absolutely unthinkable for a candidate who was down by 18 points. Now, I'm not just talking about one poll. He was down by 18 points with respect to aggregate polling. So when you take all the polls and you average them out, he was down by about 18 points. Some polls had him down by, I believe, 20 or 30 points. Like, it was ridiculous. He was not projected to win this state at all. It all looked like it was going to go to Hillary Clinton. And look, he turned it out.
Who is that twink, and why is he so goddamn hopeful? Like, seeing that is crazy because 2016 me is like Carol in the first season of The Walking Dead, and 2026 me is like Carol in the later seasons of The Walking Dead, where, you know, she's more worn and rugged and packing heat. Like, I feel like I've also been through a zombie apocalypse since the time when I recorded that video, and I'm sure that you all feel the same. And just to give you some context, that was right after, I believe, the night of Bernie's Michigan victory. And that was important because it basically breathed new life into his campaign at a time when he was starting to fall behind. And then weeks later, the bird landed on his podium in Portland. And, even though I was never really big on symbolism myself, even I felt like that was a sign from the universe to not give up hope. In retrospect, I was right to be skeptical of the symbolism because it obviously wasn't a sign of better times ahead. It was a bird that just coincidentally landed on a podium. Nonetheless, it wasn't insignificant because it meant a lot to all of us at the time. Like, we shared that moment together where we all collectively experienced, perhaps for the last time ever, hope. And it felt like the future was bright. And like comparing that to where we are today, it doesn't feel like that. But, believe it or not, I'm not just sharing this clip to cry over spilled milk or jerk myself off about how right I was to support the candidate that would have stopped Donald Trump. I'm sharing that clip because I think that it has new meaning in retrospect. It meant something to us at the time, but these days it means something different. It is a reminder that as a country, we have never learned from the mistakes that culminated in Donald Trump's victory in 2016. In particular, the Democratic Party has never learned from their mistakes that ultimately paved the way for fascism to take hold. The DNC did everything that they possibly could to sabotage Bernie Sanders. They limited debates. They signed a joint fundraising agreement with Hillary Clinton early on, which violated their own charter and neutrality clause. DNC insiders like Donna Brazile fed Clinton questions at town halls, like the death penalty question, which she was weak on. They wanted to make her appear more prepared. And I'm still bitter about the fact that Democrats accused us, Bernie Sanders supporters, Bernie bros, which included a lot of women as well. Nonetheless, we were Bernie bros, and they insinuated that we were sexist because we supported the Jewish social democrat over Hillary Clinton. And now 10 years later, they're accusing us of being anti-Semitic for not supporting Israel's genocide and apartheid. And after all of that, some Democrats are now arguing that the new party leader has to be a straight white guy, coincidentally, because Gavin Newsom is the candidate that they're going to try to shove down our throats in 2028. And he happens to be a straight white guy, so woke is out for now until they need to bring it back strategically to crush the left. In other words, nothing really changed. Oh, and they're already trying to strangle the campaigns of leftist presidential hopefuls in the crib, just like they did in 2016. For example, the media is conspicuously leaving out Ro Khanna of any discussions pertaining to 2028, with a few exceptions. On top of that, centrist third-way Democrats are already cooking up a plan to stop AOC in the event she launches a presidential bid. And there's now a coordinated campaign to slander one of the most popular left-wing surrogates for progressive Democrats in the country, Hassan Piker, who was attacked after Abdul El Sayed, the Bernie Sanders in Michigan Senate race, announced that he'd be campaigning with Hassan Piker. His opponent, Mallory McMorrow, is comparing Hassan to neo-Nazis like Nick Fuentes, and Democrats like Cory Booker, Ruben Gallego, and Alyssa Slotkin say that they refuse to go on Piker's stream because he's too controversial, even though these same people had no problem chumming it up with open Islamophobes like Bill Maher on his show, or literal war criminals like Netanyahu and Gallant. And with regard to McMorrow, it's ironic for her, of all people, to compare Hassan Piker to a Nazi, given how her own campaign finance co-chair put up a post honoring her Nazi grandfather before deleting it after taking heat. But before comparing Hassan to a Nazi, McMorrow ironically made the case for Democrats to occupy more cultural spaces from people that the party doesn't necessarily like, and even encouraged them to go on Joe Rogan's podcast because, as she put it, quote, snubbing these opportunities because of political differences contributes to the impression that the party is elitist. Right, because you wouldn't want to seem elitist, of course. Seeming Islamophobic, however, by comparing Muslims opposed to genocide with Nazis is perfectly fine, but, let's not turn away anyone else who agrees with us about Muslims being bad and genocide being good. Great strategy, Democrats. But as you can see, Democrats very clearly haven't learned from 2016, the most consequential election of our lifetime. They're still engaging in the same tactics to crush the left and doing the same cynical, disingenuous bullshit that drives away young people by attacking them. And it's more important than ever that we all learn from that election, because we may once again have another small window of opportunity to change things. We may be approaching a new crossroads with two different paths, seeing as how Trump's fascist project is collapsing. The question is, will we continue the death spiral until our empire collapses entirely, or will we try to salvage the country and pursue a new path that changes the trajectory once and for all? You see, the difference between 2016 me and 2026 me is that I no longer have hope that I once had. I no longer have hope that we're going to pick the correct path. Like, we're going to do the same shit that we did in 2016 and be as perplexed when the next fascist comes to power, because if we weren't going to do that, things would have already started to change. With that being said, that doesn't mean that I'm going to give up, but I can't not feel pessimistic when my cynicism has been proven right again and again and again, and every single time after 2016, and especially 2020, seeing as how most Democrats very clearly have not recalibrated like they should have. To go back to McMorrow, she's campaigning on the importance of, quote, universal health care, but when push comes to shove, she's actively lying about the very policy that would bring about that outcome.
What's your stand on Medicare for all?
Great question. I support, unabashedly, universal health care. Everybody should have access to health care. Now, I said it the way that I said it because some people conflate Medicare for all with universal health care. But Medicare for all, when it's actually defined, is one singular government-run healthcare system that we are all on. Now, I want you to imagine what that would look like with Donald Trump and RFK Jr. at the head of it.
Wrong. Medicare for All isn't a government-run healthcare system. It's a government-run insurance program. So either she is woefully misinformed or she's lying. But as you can see, 10 years later, and we're still hearing the same disingenuous talking points about the most common-sense policy proposal in the country. And just like in 2016, Democrats are ignoring their base and endorsing right-wing policies because they think that winning over moderate Republicans is their path to victory, as opposed to embracing their base. And it just seems like they still would rather lose than win with the left. To show you what I mean, Gavin Newsom indicated his support for Trump's illegal oil blockade of Cuba. And Josh Shapiro, another presidential contender, is an open genocide denier, and he even accused an activist of wanting permanent war for daring to say that Israel shouldn't be an ethno-supremacist apartheid state. And Andy Bashir dodged the genocide question altogether and smugly called it a litmus test. I'm not making this up.
Some of your fellow Democrats have called Israel's actions in Gaza genocide. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that's becoming one of those new litmus tests that we said we would never do as a party again. It's trying to throw out a word, and are you going to raise your hand or are you not going to? I understand that Israel was hit with a terrorist attack, the likes of which it had never seen, and it has been through a lot, and that it deserves the right to defend itself and to eradicate that terrorist organization. I believe that it could have been done without a lot of the suffering, but I put a lot of that blame also on Donald Trump.
No, that's not BJ from the Righteous Gemstones. That's an actual presidential hopeful who thinks that it's a litmus test to call a genocide. That is utterly disqualifying. And when it comes to Cory Booker, he's so lost that he's framing his presumable support for the Iran war as opposition to Donald Trump. That might be uncharitable, I'll admit, but just watch what he's saying and try to see if you could, pinpoint the point that he's trying to fucking make here.
Do you support the Trump administration's efforts to try to negotiate a deal with Iran to bring this war to an end?
I don't support this administration, period. They've gotten us into what will be looked at as one of the greatest blunders, presidential blunders of our time. Remember, this president had stated objectives, none of which he is achieving right now, from the nuclear program all the way to, frankly, regime change. The regime is more extreme.
You follow that? So he seems to think that the war in Iran is bad, but he also doesn't think that Donald Trump should end it because he's just automatically opposed to everything that Trump does, even though he still votes for Donald Trump's appointees. So what exactly is your position, Cory Booker? Do you support or oppose war with Iran? You seem to be against it, but you don't want it to end if Trump is the one that's ending it. I mean, he's the one that's doing it unilaterally since Congress has decided to just let the president do what the fuck he wants. So, he has to end it. What are we doing here? I know that his war criminal friends, Netanyahu and Gallant, don't want the war to end. So, is this his way of fence-sitting and not taking a position and just hoping that the issue goes away by the time he's running for president again? I don't know. But the point is that we're now 10 years deep into the Trump era, and Democrats have very clearly learned jack fucking shit. Meanwhile, other countries are actually looking at what we've done and they're learning from our mistakes. Canada, for example, was on the cusp of electing Pierre Poilievre, their version of Donald Trump, and then they saw us do that again and they decided to not make the same mistake. Better yet, Canada's NDP just elected Avi Lewis as their new party leader, and he is a Jewish anti-Zionist progressive who called in a genocide in his very first speech. Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, a Jewish anti-Zionist woman who doesn't just oppose Israel's genocide, she is continuing her country's FDR era by delivering for working people with affordable housing and other issues, and because of her party's dominance, fascism has not been able to take hold in Mexico. But back in America, the Democrats, whose failure led to the very disillusionment with the system that paved the way for fascism in the first place, are doubling down on a losing strategy that led to Trump's rise, and they're hoping that the fascists, I guess, are just going to choose to go away at some point on their own volition. So this is why so many of us look back fondly at 2016. We had hope that things could be better in this country, that we could rise to the occasion and take on climate change and secure Medicare for all. But 10 years later, we know better. And thus, all of that hope and optimism is gone, because after all of this shit that's happened, Trump's victory, the rise of fascism and Nazism, January 6th, a Supreme Court supermajority and devastating decisions, a global pandemic, the George Floyd protests, hyper-transphobia, war with Iran, ICE terrorism, the collapse of our planet's habitability. After all of this, we very clearly haven't learned a goddamn fucking thing. So that's why I think I felt so emotional watching that moment from 2016, because in retrospect, it's obvious that we were always destined to Mr. Magoo ourselves into this current predicament that we're in, not because it was our destiny or because of fate, but because we chose to do this to ourselves. And now that I am fully cognizant of how fucking irredeemably stupid we are as a nation, I don't think I'm ever going to feel the same way that I did back in 2016 during that moment, because if we haven't grown at all in the past 10 years, I have no reason to think that we won't fuck up again if we're ever presented with a different off-ramp.
The Humanist Report is fake news. Mike only cares about Crazy Bernie and his wacky socialist ideas. Sad, very sad. I'm unsubscribing.